In 1945, while the world watched Hiroshima burn and feared the next atomic bomb, a darker, secret weapon was quietly being imagined. Not just a bomb, but a fiery apocalypse so powerful it wouldn't even need to be dropped. This wasn't science fiction. This was Project Sundial, a real plan to burn the world. The year is 1945. World War II is ending. The atomic bomb has just changed warfare forever. But behind the headlines in hidden rooms and classified labs, another idea was taking shape. One that made Hiroshima look like a spark compared to a wildfire. It was a weapon so massive, so horrifying, that it wouldn't need a target. The mere act of detonation would ignite the sky and set the Earth ablaze. It was called Project Sundial, a concept to create a high-altitude firestorm capable of burning everything in a 400-kilometer radius. Not a weapon of war, a weapon of annihilation. Body. The end of war and the beginning of a nightmare. In August 1945, as the final chapters of the Second World War came to a close, celebrations erupted across the globe. People danced in the streets, cheered in relief, and welcomed their loved ones home from the front lines. The horror of the war had ended, or so it seemed. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were viewed by many as the ultimate blow that forced Japan to surrender. Yet while ordinary citizens embraced peace, the scientists and leaders who had created the bomb were haunted by the monster they had unleashed. In secret chambers of government buildings, particularly in Washington, D.C., a sobering realization began to take root. If the United States had succeeded in building such a powerful weapon, then it was only a matter of time before other nations, especially the Soviet Union, would do the same. Even before the last soldiers returned home, the seeds of the Cold War had already been planted. There was no time for rest. The tension between the United States and the Soviet Union deepened quickly, and it became increasingly clear to American military strategists that the post-war world would be governed not by diplomacy alone, but by the threat of unimaginable force. It was within this atmosphere of paranoia and ambition that one of the most terrifying concepts ever devised was born, a weapon not designed to destroy cities through direct impact, but one engineered to ignite the very sky above an entire region. Project Sundial. This concept evolved into what became known as Project Sundial. It was not a typical nuclear weapon, nor did it follow the conventional logic of targeting a military base or industrial center. Instead, Sundial was developed around a unique and horrifying idea. If a nuclear bomb were detonated high in the Earth's atmosphere, between 50 to 80 kilometers above the surface, the blast wouldn't create the usual mushroom cloud or ground-level destruction. Instead, it would unleash a massive burst of high-energy X-ray radiation, which, when interacting with the thinner air at that altitude, would generate an enormous fireball, one so vast and intense that it would stretch for hundreds of kilometers across the sky. Vision behind the project. Imagine looking up and witnessing the heavens turn into a blazing sheet of fire. That was the vision behind Project Sundial. The sky would essentially become the weapon. From the ground, people would see a light brighter than anything they had ever known. But it wouldn't just be bright, it would be deadly. The intense heat and radiation would be enough to incinerate forests, melt metal structures, and set entire towns ablaze, all without a single bomb ever touching the ground. Buildings would catch fire spontaneously. Roads would melt under the searing heat. Human beings would be reduced to shadows in an instant, their bodies evaporated before they even realized what had happened. What made Sundial even more disturbing was its intended purpose. It wasn't developed to target enemy troops or disrupt logistics. It was created to demonstrate absolute power, an unmistakable message to any adversary that resistance would mean instant and total annihilation. A single blast from such a weapon, triggered at the right altitude, could devastate an area spanning more than 400 kilometers in radius. That's not the destruction of a city, it's the erasure of a region, and the true horror lay not just in the immediate devastation, but in the long-term consequences that followed. The sheer energy of the Sundial explosion would lift vast amounts of radioactive debris, ash, and soot high into the stratosphere, beyond the reach of rainfall, where these particles could linger for years. From there, these clouds of darkness would slowly spread across the planet, dimming sunlight, disrupting weather patterns, and drastically lowering global temperatures. This wasn't just about fire, it was about triggering a chain reaction that could send the entire Earth into a prolonged and deadly nuclear winter. What would happen? In such a scenario, agriculture would be one of the first casualties. Crops that depend on stable temperatures and sunlight would begin to fail. Rainfall patterns would shift unpredictably. Regions that once flourished could turn to barren wastelands. Without food, social order would collapse. Starvation, not explosions, would become the killer. Billions of people across the globe, even in countries not directly targeted, could face famine, disease, and economic collapse. Despite the devastating potential of Project Sundial, the idea moved forward within certain sectors of the US military. Although no full-scale test of such a weapon ever occurred, theoretical simulations and secret war games were carried out to evaluate its effectiveness. The concept was refined. Such a device could be mounted on a suborbital missile, capable of reaching the target altitude within minutes. It could be launched from land-based silos or submarines hidden beneath the ocean. The destructive power was almost unimaginable, so extreme that it bypassed the conventional idea of warfare altogether. Yet not everyone within the scientific and military community supported this path. Many of the very individuals who had worked on the Manhattan Project, including J. Robert Oppenheimer, began to speak out against these new forms of nuclear terror. They recognized that Sundial was not a tool for tactical advantage, it was a planet-destroying threat. As one internal memo chillingly stated, this is not a weapon of war, it is a weapon against the Earth. The end of the project. Eventually, the United States government decided not to pursue the project any further. The blueprints were shelved, the plans were locked away. Project Sundial never moved from paper to practice, but the fact remains, it was built. It was simulated, it was considered, and that is what makes it so disturbing. Even though Sundial was never launched, the ideology behind it did not vanish. The idea that peace can be maintained through overwhelming fear, that security can be achieved through the threat of extinction, still lingers in global defense strategies. Over the decades, similar ideas have resurfaced in different forms. Orbital weapon platforms, high-altitude electromagnetic pulse devices, and other experimental technologies designed to control not just the battlefield, but the environment itself. In the end, Project Sundial serves as a chilling reminder of how close humanity came to building a weapon that could have brought about its own end, not by accident, but by design. It wasn't merely a military innovation. It was an extinction-level threat created out of fear, nurtured by ambition, and halted only by the faint echo of reason. Though it was never used, its very existence challenges us to consider what we are willing to create in the name of defense, and how easily we might justify the unthinkable when fear takes the driver's seat. So there it is, the most insane weapon you've probably never heard about, Project Sundial, a plan to turn the sky into a burning disk and bring eternal night to Earth. Thankfully, it never left the drawing board, but the fact it existed at all should keep us up at night. If this story blew your mind, give it a like, drop a comment on what you do in a world set ablaze, and make sure to subscribe for more chilling deep dives into secrets history tried to forget.